Once upon a battlefield. The story of David and Goliath has been told countless times, but few stop to imagine the depth of courage it required for a young shepherd boy to step forward when trained warriors trembled in fear. Goliath, a giant clad in bronze armor, towered over everyone. His taunts echoed across the valley, a constant reminder of the strength of the Philistine army. Israel's soldiers stood back, feeling defeated before the fight even began. David, however, was not a soldier. He was the youngest of Jesse's sons, a boy who spent his days watching sheep and playing music for the king. Yet, as he arrived at the battlefield to deliver food to his brothers, something in him sparked at the sound of Goliath's mocking words. He couldn't understand why no one was standing up for God's people, why no one had the courage to defend their honor. David's heart burned with a righteous anger. Who is this Philistine who dares to defy the armies of the living God? He asked. An unlikely hero, David steps forward. David's question surprised those around him. His brothers scoffed, dismissing him as just a boy, too young to understand the dangers. Yet, David persisted. He approached King Saul with confidence, explaining his past victories over lions and bears while guarding his sheep. The Lord who delivered me from the lion and the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine, he declared. Saul, perhaps out of desperation or perhaps seeing something unique in David's eyes, agreed to let him fight. But when the armor was placed on David, it felt heavy and restrictive. He chose to face Goliath with only what he knew, a sling, 5 smooth stones, and unwavering faith in God. The battle of courage in the face of fear. As David stepped onto the battlefield, Goliath laughed, mocking the sight of this unarmed youth. "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" He sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. David's response was calm yet filled with power. "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, whom you have defied." The soldiers held their breath. David reached into his pouch, took a stone, and placed it in his sling. He swung it with precision honed over years of protecting his flock. The stone flew through the air and struck Goliath on the forehead. The giant stumbled, his enormous body crashing to the ground. Silence fell over the battlefield as everyone realized what had happened. Against all odds, David had conquered Goliath. Reflection of lessons in faith and bravery of small David. David's victory was not just a triumph of strength, it was a victory of faith over fear, of courage over intimidation. By stepping onto that battlefield, David demonstrated that when we stand with God, no giant is too big to conquer. His story reminds us that sometimes the greatest victories come not from power or weapons, but from a heart that trusts God completely. In our own lives, we face giants that seem impossible to defeat, challenges in our relationships, struggles with doubt, fears about the future. David's story teaches us that faith can empower us to overcome even the most intimidating obstacles. When we believe that God stands with us, we are no longer afraid, for we know that His strength goes before us. What would you do if every person around you doubted your ability to overcome the impossible? Would you still have the courage to stand alone, driven only by faith and the quiet assurance that God was with you? The echoes of victory and unseen challenges by David. The scene on the battlefield after David's victory over Goliath was one of astonishment and celebration. As the Philistines fled, defeated and fearful, the Israelite army surged forward with renewed courage. But what happened next in David's life wasn't just smooth sailing. Victory often brings unforeseen challenges, and David's journey was no different. David, the unexpected hero, was soon embraced by the people. Songs of his bravery filled the streets. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. These praises reached the ears of King Saul himself, and instead of admiration, they sparked jealousy and fear in the king. Saul began to see David as a threat, a man whom God favored and who might someday take his throne. Kindly share your thoughts and comments and subscribe for more. Let's keep the conversation going. Question: could David, once a humble shepherd, survive in a palace where jealousy reigned? The wilderness beckons, running from Saul. What many don't realize is that David's victory over Goliath marked the beginning of a long and difficult journey. With Saul's envy growing into hatred, David found himself in constant danger. The king whom he had served with loyalty and honor now wanted him dead. David was forced to leave the palace and flee into the wilderness, with little more than his faith and the clothes on his back. In those lonely nights, surrounded by rocks and stars, David wrestled with questions that might sound familiar. Why is this happening to me, Lord? I did everything right. I honored you. I served your people. Why am I now being hunted? Question. Have you ever found yourself questioning God's plan, especially when trials come after moments of victory? Friends in unexpected places. The friendship of Jonathan. In the midst of David's isolation, God brought him an unexpected ally, Jonathan, Saul's own son. Jonathan, moved by David's courage and faith, saw him as more than just a friend. He recognized David's destiny. Though Jonathan stood to inherit Saul's throne, he chose to support David, even pledging his loyalty to protect him from his father's wrath. Jonathan's friendship was a blessing, yet it came at a price. David's presence in Jonathan's life became a source of tension and heartbreak, as Jonathan found himself torn between love for his friend and loyalty to his father. Would you be able to love so selflessly, to the point of surrendering your own dreams for the sake of God's greater plan? Faith tested in the cave, choosing mercy over revenge. David's journey led him to a place called En-Gedi, where he hid in a cave with his men. One day, by a twist of fate, Saul entered the very cave where David was hiding. David's men urged him to kill Saul, claiming it was God's will. This is your chance, David. God has delivered Saul into your hands. End this once and for all. Yet, standing mere steps away from his enemy, David chose mercy. He cut off a piece of Saul's robe instead, sparing the life of the man who sought to destroy him. This act of mercy wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a profound demonstration of David's faith in God's timing and justice. As Saul left the cave, David stepped out and called to him, holding up the piece of robe to show he meant no harm. In that moment, Saul was moved to tears, acknowledging David's righteousness, though his heart would soon harden again. In moments of conflict, are we able to show mercy to those who have wronged us, trusting God to be our defender? Life in the wilderness leaning on God alone. For years, David lived in exile, moving from place to place. It was in this wilderness that David learned the art of leadership and reliance on God. Despite his hardships, he grew in character and faith. In the solitude of the desert, David poured out his heart to God, composing many of the Psalms we read today. Psalms like "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want" were born in the valleys and caves where David faced his fears and doubts. This time of exile was a refining process. God was shaping David into a king who would depend on him above all else. A king who would lead with humility and compassion because he had known hardship and suffering. Could God be using your own wilderness season to shape and prepare you for something greater? The promise fulfilled, from shepherd to king. Finally, after years of waiting, the day came when Saul was defeated in battle. David was anointed king, fulfilling the promise God had made to him in his youth. His journey from shepherd to king was not a straightforward path. It was marked by victories, betrayals, and countless challenges. But through it all, David had held on to his faith. When David ascended to the throne, he did so with a heart that had been humbled and strengthened by God. He ruled not only as a warrior and a king but also as a man after God's own heart. His life, marked by triumph and tragedy, became a testament to the power of faith, resilience, and a heart willing to trust in God's timing. Question: are we willing to trust God, even when His timing seems slow and His ways seem unclear? Reflections on David's tale. Lessons for us. David's story resonates deeply because it is one of perseverance, courage, and unwavering faith. His life reminds us that our greatest battles are often not against external giants but the internal ones: fear, doubt, jealousy, and the desire for revenge. His story encourages us to show mercy, to remain steadfast in hardship, and to trust God's plan even when we can't see the full picture. David's journey was long and difficult, but through it all, God was shaping him, preparing him for His purpose. His life challenges us to see our own struggles through a similar lens. God may be using our wilderness seasons, our moments of pain, and our victories to shape us into the people He has called us to be. Final question: are you willing to embrace your own journey, trusting that God is with you, shaping you, and preparing you for a greater purpose? This continuation deepens the journey of David from his initial victory over Goliath to his ultimate growth into a leader shaped by trials and faith. Let me know if you'd like similar detailed stories for other tales. Kindly share your thoughts in comments and subscribe for more. Amen.